Today, there are more news sources than ever, but many of them share biased and even fake news. With all of these sources and headlines, it would make sense for the population to be more educated and aware of societal problems, but that is not the case. Most people are unaware of the dangers that news can hold. Many of these sources are spreading falsified information. A Stanford study found that a lot of students don't know how to figure out the credibility of a news source. Social media has enabled these news outlets to become more accessible. According to the Pew Research Center, 67% of adults in the U.S. use social media as their top news source. It is no wonder, then, that the fake news epidemic has swept the nation. Although fake news is a self-explanatory term, there are actually a few things that fit into that category. Luc Steinberg from Evie, an organization whose goal is to teach people media literacy, published an article with this infographic. It shows the 10 types of misleading news, some characteristics of each, their impact levels, as well as the motivations behind them. It's a helpful tool for students as well as anyone else who gets their news online. But even though people are aware of fake news, it still seems to have a hold on society. So why is fake news so widespread? According to an article by Christopher Paul and Miriam Matthews, one reason is that there are multiple sources sharing the same false information, and there are thousands of viewers spreading it. They say that quantity does indeed have a quality all its own. Even though people are realizing that a certain news source is fake, because of how many different sources and profiles are sharing it, they may be more inclined to change their minds. Christopher and Miriam also say that people suffer from confirmation bias. They view news and opinions that confirm existing beliefs as more credible than other news and opinions, regardless of the quality of the arguments. This can be a dangerous thing if people use a news story as proof for their argument. We've all seen it happen. The other day, I was scrolling through Twitter and noticed a trending video.
The evidence is uncontradicted that the president used taxpayer dollars to ask the Ukrainians to help him cheat an election. And the complaint that I've heard from
This is a live television interview with Congressman Eric Swalwell in which he allegedly farted while speaking. The clip, of course, went viral. Everyone had something to say about it. At first, I laughed it off as silly and ridiculous, but as I started looking into the situation, I came across this article claiming that even President Donald Trump had commented about it. With a simple click, it is easy to see the mistake. The website had falsely claimed that the president had tweeted this, when in fact, it was his son, Donald Trump Jr. Though the campaign team quickly debunked this mishap, unaware readers might have formed opinions about both parties based on this single false source. It is easy then to see why it is necessary to evaluate our opinions and the opinions of the writers and publishers of the news sources we follow. Richard Paul from the Foundation for Critical Thinking said it best. One of the most important abilities that a thinker can have is the ability to monitor and assess his or her own thinking while processing the thinking of others. Another reason that we accept fake news so easily is that we are often too lazy or too busy to take the time to really research a claim that we read. MIT scientist David Rand says it's just that people aren't stopping, they're rolling on. Slowing down and really taking the time to read and analyze the information as well as the source can help find those pieces that aren't accurate. A study done by Rand showed that people tend to accept fake news that they had already seen before. So without realizing it, we are more likely to accept false information as fact since we are familiar with it. Sam Weinberg, a psychologist at Stanford University, has conducted many studies which show that people are more likely to believe a source's validity based on the site's URL and design. This is another reason why it might be easy to accept fake news as true. It just seems like it comes from a credible source. Now we know why fake news is believable, so then why do people create fake news? According to an article written by Tracy Delascio-Martinuk, the two main purposes of creating fake news is for money and political reasons. Titling something as fake news can help stop users from believing lies and misinformation, but it can also be used to attack political facts. As the farting example from earlier showed, even small situations like these are used to undermine the intelligence and authority of the parties involved. How can we tell the difference between actual fake news and accurate news that is a victim of confirmation bias? By teaching students news literacy skills. According to an article by Rory O'Connor from the New York Times, news literacy is an emerging discipline that empowers students to use analytical thinking skills to judge the reliability and credibility of news reports and information sources. Society needs to double and triple check the information they're being told, no matter how likely or reliable it may seem. O'Connor says that teaching students lifelong news literacy skills seems more important than ever. But how do we do that? Mike Caulfield, the author of Web Literacy for Student Fact Checkers, gave 4 moves that students can do to verify their source. 1. Check for previous works. This means to use sources like Snopes, PolitiFact, and factcheck.org to hopefully find that source already checked. 2. Go upstream to the source. Since a lot of the information we read online is from other sources, going upstream means to find the original source of that content and find out if it is reliable. 3. Read laterally. Most students read vertically, staying on the website to figure out its credibility. Fact checkers, however, read laterally, going outside the website to find out if it's reliable. And 4. Circle back. If you reach a dead end, starting over might be helpful for you to move down a different path. In his article, Andrew Arnold gives another solution to the problem. He says, don't become a passive consumer of news and other data. Sharpening our critical thinking skills will help us become better users of news sources. Besides politics, fake news doesn't seem to have much of an effect on normal people, but psychologists Cian McLean, Susan Paxton, and Eleanor Wertheim conducted a study to examine the effect media literacy had on the body satisfaction of adolescent girls. They said that, overall, the pattern of results suggests that critical thinking is highly important in determining the response to media viewing for body satisfaction. Falsified images, especially those depicting models, are known to have a negative effect on teenagers, but critical thinking skills can help reduce those effects. So what is critical thinking then? I conducted an interview with Julia Bardot, a librarian at Red Rocks Community College. As a librarian, Julia is well versed in the topic of critical thinking. She says that critical thinking is
being able to take in information and think about it. Ask questions about the information. Ask questions as to, does this kind of go in line with what I, as a human, know and experience in the world, and also what I've heard.
If critical thinking is so important, then we must be teaching it to our students, right? A study conducted by Richard Paul showed that 89% of faculty said their primary goal was to teach critical thinking, but only 19% could explain what critical thinking actually is. Even more shocking, only 9% were actually teaching it. According to Paul, the main problem with teaching students critical thinking is that most teachers don't have a clear understanding of what it is, so therefore can't successfully teach it. The first step is to fully understand what critical thinking is. Then teachers will be able to teach it to their students. Though it may seem like a tedious and time-consuming process, checking the validity of the news outlets we frequent is needed in order to have a better educated society that is full of critical thinkers. If we can put in the effort to become better and more accurately informed, everyone will benefit from it. As Weinberg said, if we can't come together as a society around this issue, it is our doom.